One of the main things I use when working out which teams are going to improve in the following season or which teams are going to decline is using the Pythagorean equation or expectations. This is where we're looking at basically how many points teams scored, how many they conceded, and creating an equation to figure out how many games they should have won versus how many games they actually won during the regular season. Now, before we get into the 2025 teams, which teams exceeded, which teams fell below expectations, so then we can make the projections for next season, I want to look back at 2024 to 2025 so you can see how this works and how accurate it was across that season. So I'll pop that up on the screen. So this is the games teams won in 2024 compared to how many games are expected to win based on their points for and against. You'll notice two teams with the red highlight in the difference column. They are the Melbourne Storm, who won 19 games but were only expected to win 16 and a half, and the Canberra Raiders, who won 12 games but were only expected to win 9 and a half. Going from 2024 to 2025, the Storm went from 19 wins down to 17 wins, so they were -2 the following season. So that correlated with them performing above expectation in 2024. The Canberra Raiders, of all the teams who exceeded expectations, so that have a negative difference on that table that you can see, they were the only team that actually won more games. They went from 12 to 19 and won the minor premiership. So when you dive in and look at what contributed to that, why did Canberra, who were only expected to win 9.5 games in 2024, then go on to win 19 games the following season? In 2024, Canberra had an 8-2 record, win-loss in games decided by 6 or less. Generally, teams who have records like that show regression the following season. They don't win 80% of close games. Canberra in 2025 did the exact same thing. They won 8 of 10 that were decided by 6 or less, and that was what contributed to them increasing their win total from that 12 to the 19. It's something that Canberra, they've been the one anomaly that have consistently done that over multiple seasons in a row. The other 4 teams who exceeded expectations in 2024 and were potential decliners in 2025, the Penrith Panthers, they went from 17 wins down to 13. The North Queensland Cowboys, 15 wins in 2024 down to 9 wins last season. The Knights, they went from 12 wins all the way down to 6 wins in the wooden spoon. And the St. George Illawarra Dragons, 11 wins down to 8 wins. So of the 6 teams, based off their points for and against, that exceeded expectations in 2024, 5 of those 6 won less games in 2025. Then the teams who fell short of their expected to win. So these were the teams that won less games than they really should have and were expected to improve from 2024 to 2025. The Parramatta Eels were the team that had the biggest differential. They only won 7 games, but were expected to win nearly 9.5. So of all the teams that you could circle that you think they should improve in 2025, they were the one. They went from 7 wins up to 10 wins in 2020. Aside from the Parramatta Eels, there were 10 other teams that were expected to win more games than they actually did in 2024. So were expected to improve in the 2025 season. 6 of those 10 teams won more games. So the Canterbury Bulldogs, they jumped from 14 wins up to 16 wins, secured a top 4 berth. The Dolphins, they went from 11 wins up to 12, just missed out on the finals. The Broncos, or Brisbane Broncos, they went from 10 wins up to 15 wins and went from missing the top 8 to winning the premiership from 4th. The New Zealand Warriors, they went from 9 up to 14 wins and made finals. The Rabbitohs improved slightly from 7 wins up to 9 wins. And the West Tigers, they moved up from 6 wins and the wooden spoon up to 9 wins in 2025. The other 4 teams, 2 of them were just 1 win off what they got the previous season, so they declined, but it was only minimal. The Cronulla Sharks went from 16 wins down to 15, and the Manly Seagulls went from 13 wins down to 12 wins. The other 2 teams that were expected to improve but didn't were the Sydney Roosters. They went from 16 down to 13 wins, but the Sydney Roosters, they had the toughest draw of any team last season, so they had to deal with that. They also struggled in close games, just winning 2 of 7 that were decided by 6 or less. And then the Gold Coast Titans, They finished 14th with 8 wins, and then they dropped down to 6 wins in 2025. So -2 overall. And they're another team, they actually had the worst record in close games in 2025, with just winning 1 of 6 matches that were decided by 6 or less. So realistically, aside from the Sharks and Seagulls, who dropped to 1, nearly every team, other than the ones that struggled in close games or had the toughest draw, improved their record in 2025. So that's how it worked from 2024 to 2025. Now, the 2025 wins. We've got one team that massively exceeded expectations. There's no prizes for guessing who the team that exceeded expectations the most was. That was the Canberra Raiders. They won 19. They were expected to win just under 15 games with another really strong record in close matches. That's ultimately what got them the majority of their wins in the end. Most teams win around 40 to 55% of close matches. The Raiders keep staying up there around 80%, which is obviously a testament to their ability in the clutch. And it's going to be interesting to see if that can continue going forward. It does really feel unlikely, like long term. That's usually not the case. They need to be able to win more games by bigger margins to be able to generate that. Regardless of the loss of Jamal Fogarty from the side, I can't really see any world that the Raiders maintain 19 wins, even within 1 or 2 of that this upcoming season. They also go from the easiest draw to a significantly tougher one. It's not the toughest, but it's definitely quite a bit tougher than what they had to deal with last season. So Raiders are one that I'm definitely expecting to drop off. Now, of the other teams, there were 6 other teams that exceeded expected wins. There's 2 of them that I think can still improve off of that. Those teams are the Canterbury Bulldogs and the Cronulla Sharks. So the Bulldogs won 16 games, but they're only expected to win 14.7. The reason I think the Bulldogs can improve, they have a very similar draw to last season. And if you remember, they were the team that went undefeated the longest at the beginning of last season. They were traveling very, very well. Then came all the drama with the signing of Lachlan Galvin and everything. And the team kind of playing players out of position, putting people on the bench and all this kind of stuff, that their season just fell apart in that final third of the year. Defensively, they're the number 1 side. So with that in mind, there's potential for improvement. And then the Cronulla Sharks, they won 15 games. They're only expected to win around 14. However, they go from an above average draw difficulty to the 3rd easiest in the upcoming season. So there's quite a bit of potential here for the Sharks to improve, and I think they're going to be able to do that. So out of the 7 teams, they're the only 2 that I can see either equaling or improving wins from last season. The Melbourne Storm, who won 1 more game than they probably should have, the Warriors, the South Sydney Rabbitohs, and the Newcastle Knights are all teams that I think may fall below. The Rabbitohs are one that I've put a question mark to, just due to the fact that the Rabbitohs, their season ultimately hinges on the health of their players. They do have somewhat of an older list in general, and picking up injuries and that kind of thing has been the norm for them the past couple of seasons. A lot of their players only kind of play half the season, and if that eventuates, then they're probably going to be down there around 8 or 9 wins again. But if everyone stays healthy, which is a big if, then there's already the reported injuries to Latrell Mitchell and also David Fafita. So if that continues and is an issue throughout the season, then they're probably going to be around that mark. If they stay healthy, though, they can definitely improve, that's for sure. Then we have the teams who fell below their expected to wins, and there's definitely more of these than there is who won more games than they should have. The 2 biggest standouts, the Gold Coast Titans hit the list again in teams that won less games than they probably should have. They were expected to win 8.6, only winning the 6 games. This is due to their record in close matches, letting them down. Ultimately, you'd expect to see improvement from the Titans at some point. They have an easier draw this season, so they realistically should improve on their 6-win tally, especially multiple years now in a row where they have fallen below. And when I went back to 2015 and up until now, there has been 19 teams with a greater than 2 differential. So they have lost more than 2 games than they really should have. And in the following season, 16 of those 19 teams had a better winning record. There were only 2 that had a worse record and then 1 that had an equal record. So effectively, Titans, if you go off overall NRL history, absolutely should improve. So they just need to be able to put that on the park. They have a new coach this season, easier draw, so the possibility is there. Then the other team that massively exceeded were then the other team that also fits this criteria of being better than a +2 differential is the Dolphins, who won 12 games but were expected to win 14. Now, they did start the season 0-4, and then their run started, so they were just kind of a bit late getting into it, and also did win a lot of games by big margins, which obviously inflates the expected wins chart. So slightly wary of it. I don't think they were a 14-win team last season, but I do think they were slightly better than a 12-win team, so probably right there in the 13 range. Going into this season, they're one that you could definitely see rising into the top 8 if they can continue their form from last season and improve defensively. That's the biggest thing. Then of the sides that last season fell below their expected wins that I can see improve, like basically this category, majority of these teams should improve, but I've highlighted 4 of the teams that I think should definitely improve. The Brisbane Broncos, they won 15 games. They had a slow start, middle of the season, and came home strong. They should be able to take that momentum into this next season and don't have a tougher draw or anything to deal with. So they're well positioned to improve. But last season, they're pretty spot on with their expected wins versus their actual wins, but they're one that I can definitely see improving. The Sydney Roosters is another one. They fell 1.4 below their expected wins last season, but had the toughest draw and struggled in close games. There's realistically no reason why they can't improve. They have the 4th toughest draw this season, so it gets a little bit easier. The Parramatta Eels were half below what they're expected to do. They obviously missed Mitch Moses for a good chunk of last season. They're also impacted with Dylan Brown signing with the Newcastle Knights after week 1, and like all the potential internal drama around the team and lineups that they are chopping and changing. I think the Eels can definitely be one of the teams that will improve this season. And then also have the St. George Dragons. They won 8 games last season. They were expected to win 9.5. They didn't really benefit from a good record in close games either, just winning 4 of 12. And also, they go from the 5th toughest draw to the easiest draw in 2026. So they're one of the sides that right down there in the bottom 3 last year that I think are a definite candidate to improve this season. The other teams that fit the category as well, but I'm just less confident in them improving their win total, is the Panthers. Now, they won 13 games, are expected to win 14. They do have a very tough start to the season, but ultimately the Panthers should win more than 13 games. The Seagulls, they have a very easy draw this year, so they should improve on their 12 wins. The Cowboys are on par. They won the 9 games, expected to win 9.5. Potentially a touch of improvement, but it's going to be tough for them, and probably comes down to how well they start the season and make use of that easy patch. And the only other team is the West Tigers, who won 9 games. It was pretty much on par. They started the season fairly well, but did slip away a little bit late. Did struggle a touch in close games. I feel like they are on the rise with some good signings over the past couple of seasons. The only issue for the Tigers, they had one of the easiest draws last season and does get quite a bit tougher in 2026. Those are all the teams from the 2025, what their expected wins were versus their actual wins. The teams I think can improve, the teams that I think may fall from last season purely based on these numbers. There's lots of different factors to consider. I cover them all in the 2026 NRL betting guide. Make sure you're on the wait list if you're not already, so you can be the first to get it when it's released next week. Thanks guys for watching. If you're excited to make money betting on the NRL, make sure you subscribe to this channel. I'll see you in the next video.